You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Rosebud Woman was developed in response to women's unaddressed needs for beautiful, luxurious products that provide relief and pleasure for all women, whether it be for period pain, perimenopausal woes, or menopause symptoms. Intimate wellness products are often designed to use with a sexual partner or medicalized to treat a diagnosed issue. Rosebud Women feels ceremonial, like I'm doing a beauty ritual while addressing my 50-year-old body's needs. Their everyday honor balm is gynecologist tested and hormone free. It hydrates, conditions, and replenishes intimate skin. It's excellent for pregnancy, perimenopause, menopause, and any other hormonal changes. Use the affiliate link in my show notes for 20% off. You can check out their products at www.rosebudwoman, that's ROSEWOMAN.com. Check out all their beautiful products and use the affiliate code in the show notes. Rachael Lancaster is a wellness coach who ditched New York City for a life of full-time adventure. She is a house sitter who has traveled now all along the West Coast and Pacific Northwest, house sitting and taking the most beautiful photographs of her solo hikes. You should be following her on Instagram at Rachael Ran Away. I'm so thrilled to have her on the podcast, and I'm hoping that she will inspire you to choose your own adventure. Ladies and gentlemen, Rachael Lancaster.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I am doing really good. Yeah.
Tell everybody where you currently are.
So I am currently in Eugene, Oregon. I'm sorry, I was in Eugene and now I'm in Bend, which is Central Oregon.
Wonderful.
So I'll be here for a few days.
And explain to people what professional house sitting is and how did this even happen?
Okay. So professional house sitting is you basically go into somebody's house when they go away on vacation and you look after their home and garden, plant, bring in their mail, and 9 times out of 10 they'll have pets. So they'll have little critters for you to look after and you just take care of them. And you basically move into their homes and live there and enjoy the surroundings, and that's basically it. And it's amazing.
How did this become something that you decided to do? Because I know you're a naturopath by trade, and you were living in Queens, New York, and then all of a sudden you had moved across the country. We had kind of lost touch with each other a little bit, but you had moved across the country and you were living in Seattle or Portland, right?
Portland. Yeah.
Right. And you were living in Portland. And then all of a sudden I see that you're posting on Instagram that you're putting your whole life in a storage unit. And now you're doing this and you're posting these beautiful, breathtaking photos and traveling all over the West Coast and Southwest. So tell me, how did you think to do this? How did this start? And how do you organize all of it? Well, let's start with just how did you get, how did this become an idea that you wanted to do?
Okay. So I guess it started back in 2019. I was going through a marriage breakdown and I decided that I wanted to move to Portland from New York City. I didn't know anyone in Portland. I just was drawn there because of the natural beauty. And it's also the vegan hub. And I didn't know how to do it because I had nothing lined up, no job, no accommodation, nothing like that. So I reached out to my Airbnb host in Portland where I stayed and just randomly said, hey, if you ever know of anybody that needs a house sitter, let me know. And just so funny how it happened. He actually connected me with friends of his who are full-time house sitters. So they got me my first house sitting job out in Portland, but I also connected around the same time with another couple who were full-time house sitters, and they introduced me to the platform that I use now. And I moved to Portland that way, and for 3 months I just house sat, I think, 5 different places and eventually moved into my own, and I fell in love with it. And that it sort of sparked a desire in me to travel around and go on road trips and just get on the road and travel. And yeah, I'll do it one day, when I have a partner and, when all the things are right and perfect in place. And so I guess fast forward to 2022, which was one of those years that was basically hellish for me. There was a whole, I guess, series of unfortunate events that happened. And it was sort of like the universe was giving me little nudges. Like, come on, follow your heart, that little whisper in your heart, follow it. And I kept ignoring it. And so all these things kept getting worse all these little challenges would become big challenges until the end of 2022. It was sort of like it just pushed me off the cliff. And that was when I made the decision to follow that dream I had and get on the road. And it happened in a split second. I remember talking to a friend and I'm like, I don't know how to do this though. Like, do I do it in the US, like do the house sitting in the US and then go home to Australia? Or do I, and she goes, no, you need to go home to Australia first and spend some time at home. So I did that. And once I made that decision though, it all fell into place. It all just flowed beautifully. Sort of like all the jigsaw pieces came together.
It's amazing. Have you always been somebody who's been an adventurous, out-of-the-box person? Or were you like risk averse and now like you discovered this new part of yourself?
So I discovered human design a few years ago. And according to that, I am what they call a manifester, which is about 9% of the population. Once I started learning about that, it all fell into place. Like my whole life, I was a bit of a rebelled against sort of conventional living and thoughts and thinking and all of that. But I somehow managed to always end up in relationships that I guess put me in a box. My life became my partner's, I was living their life, not my own. And I struggled with depression and anxiety all through my life since about 12 years of age. And I guess 2022 was really the first time in my life that I truly, did the thing that I really wanted to do. And it was scary and exhilarating all at once. I'm definitely not someone who is risk averse, but dealing with anxiety, that's always there. So, I guess living a conventional life was never really me, but it wasn't until 2022 that I really stepped into that.
Yeah. I think that there's so much pressure to have a life that other people understand.
Right.
Especially as a woman.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be able to be like, oh, okay, I get her. She's safe.
and I don't mean like she's a safe person. I mean like she's being taken care of, right? She's got someone who's looking out for her, because I think that we still, even in this day and age, think that women can't take care of themselves on some level.
Yeah.
There's an internalized misogyny to our culture that kind of tells you like a woman needs somebody else
Mhm.
or she can't do it,
Yeah.
you know? And to live outside of the box, we face a lot of judgment from other people. As
Definitely.
women who are, I mean, I know you're a little younger than me, but I don't think terribly that much younger. I'm 53 and you are 49,
Yeah.
29. Right. So it's like, there's that judgment of like not being married. There's the judgment about not having had children.
Hmm.
Like when you live a life that's different than what we were raised to live, I think that we always get pushback. How do you handle, like, do you ever get that pushback, or are people like, oh my God, I want to have your life? Or are they like, are you okay? Like
A
concern.
little bit of everything. The thing I get the most, a few things have come up just listening to you talk then. One, which I laugh at, years ago, and I was in my 30s and I was having, a pap smear. And the doctor was saying, well, you're 35. You're running out of time to have children. I'm like, yeah, I don't want any.
Yes.
And she's like, what? But she couldn't understand that. And it was so offensive. And it put me in a really vulnerable position because she was in the middle of doing the pap smear when she was talking about that.
Right.
And I wanted to get up off that table and just walk out because she made me so angry. But then with this, what I'm doing now, I get a lot more of, I wish I could do what you're doing. I get that all the time. And firstly, I say, well, yeah, me too. I wish I could do what I was doing. And then say, oh, man. And I pinch myself literally every day. But the thing is, there's no special reason why I can do this and someone else can't. So, people don't have to do what I'm doing exactly. They don't have to be so drastic about it. But I really encourage people that if there is something they really want to do, just to do it. So that's one thing. I don't really get too much pushback, I guess. At least maybe people are too scared to speak anything to me because they know I'll put them in their place. But I get a lot of, oh, I worry about you. Are you safe? And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Sit at home and just, be safe in those four walls? Or am I going to go live my life? And I met this amazing man in Taos. His name was Harold, and he actually gave me this necklace, which it's a little coral heart-shaped pendant. And he lives in the Taos Pueblo, which is the native people's dwellings there. They've been there for at least 1,000 years, and people still live there, and they also have businesses. And that was an amazing experience. But chatting to him, he was like, I worry about you. You're a single female traveling, and I want to give you a gift. Can I give this to you? So I wear this 99% of the time. It's like it makes me feel safe. And I know, to some that might be silly, but to me, it's my little, safe pendant, safety pendant.
Yeah, I don't think it's silly at all. I think that's amazing that, he honored your sovereignty and also like wanted to give you something that made you feel protected.
Yeah, apparently coral is protective. Still, I don't know, a substance. Gem.
I don't even know what coral means. Something from God that's protecting all of us, right?
Yeah.
Manage the logistics. Like, how many days, like, how do you organize going from one place to another? Do you have like a plan, or do you kind of go like a butterfly from flower to flower?
A little bit of both. So when I first started this adventure, my plan was to go all over the state. And after a couple excuse me, after a couple of weeks of driving endlessly and getting nowhere, I realized that was a big, big thing to do, especially when I was just starting out. So I decided to just focus on the West. And I mean, one of the ultimate goals of doing this was to actually find a new place to live. So I realized that I didn't want to live on the East Coast anymore, and the Midwest wasn't really my vibe. So yeah, focusing on the West. So what I would do is find a house sit in an area, in a state that looked really good. And then I would just go from there and then plan everything around that. And I tended to stay in a state for 1 to 2 months at a time before moving on to the next state. And the planning, there is a lot of planning. So although I don't really plan on where I'm going next, because that's it's up to where the house sit is, right? But I do a lot of planning around the adventures and also what to do when there's gaps in between and conditions and all of that fun stuff. So it can get quite overwhelming at times.
What do you do in the times between? Where do you stay?
So depending on the weather, it's one of the reasons I went to California for winter, because sunshine. And so I either camp and explore, national parks or state parks. I haven't really gotten brave enough to go out into backcountry camping yet. But the other thing that I do is utilize Airbnbs. And depending where I am, if I'm back in Oregon, I have friends that I can stay with, although I don't really like to overstay a welcome. So like 1 to 2 days is all I really like to stay. Right. But yeah, Airbnbs are a big thing, especially when the weather's not great.
And you just need a hot shower and a soft bed that you can stay in, and you don't have a house sit lined up. You're like, oh, I need a shower. Oh, I need a real bed. Oh, I can't sleep on the ground anymore.
Oh yeah.
Camping experience, or is this all like learning on the go?
Pretty much learning on the go. So I was a late bloomer when it comes to camping. I didn't actually go on the last 10 years, but only very sporadically. And in the last few years, I did, I think 2020, I went on a 2-week trip to Utah, but that was with a friend. So that was sort of a good way to eat into it. I had no idea how to set up a tent. I had no idea. And it was really exciting to learn all about it, though. I went out and bought a bunch of books and borrowed a bunch from the library and became obsessed about it. And now,
like, you weren't someone who grew up camping. Like, that's not something your family did.
No.
Skills you picked up in your 40s.
Yes, because my mom was, she was a single mom, so we didn't have much money, and we didn't go on vacations. We didn't go on road trips or anything like that. So I'm a newbie. I was in my 40s.
And I bonded on when we first became friends, like you and I are like, ex-goth girls. So like goths don't camp.
Exactly. I would never go in the sun. I only like the beach when it's nighttime or if it's raining. Now, totally different. I lie on the beach and get a tan and get my vitamin D. But yeah, camping and hiking was never really, even though I grew up in Tasmania, which is very similar to the Pacific Northwest in terrain and climate and everything. It's beautiful, but I just didn't appreciate it when I grew up. I just wanted to get into the biggest city and moved to Sydney, and then I moved to New York City, which is, huge city.
Sure.
Much nature there.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you ever... Well, first of all, wait, I want to ask, before I ask you the next question, I have an intermediate question. Do you have stuff? And if so, where's all your stuff?
So my stuff, I sold most of it or gave it away. I have a 5x4 storage unit in Portland still.
That's a tiny storage unit.
It is, but it's I just want to get rid of it all. But unfortunately, most of it is books, naturopathic college note, what else? Clothing, shoes, and sentimental stuff. So there, and a massage table. So there's not actually much there, but I recently went through it all. I had the equivalent of 5 suitcases worth of clothing, which had already been downsized from when I put it in storage, but I went back and got it all out, and I'm down to just over 2 suitcases worth of clothing now. So that feels so good. And it's funny, though, the things that you hold on to. I had a lamp that I, for some reason, kept. It's a little bedside lamp. And there was nothing special about it. There was no sentimental value to it. It wasn't expensive. It was like $30. And for some reason, I kept it. And then I'm like, what am I doing? I can buy a new lamp, or whenever I need one again. So I just let that go. You put it out on the street and someone picked it up, and it's really bizarre thing that we hold on to and keep.
It is strange. I find myself, like, I look around where I am now in my overstuffed closet with things I will never wear again. Things that, either wouldn't wear because they're not my style, or just don't fit, or whatever. And we're just so attached to comfort and routine and predictability. To be able to put that aside is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people want to do it, and they feel like they can't.
Yeah. It's definitely challenging. And even going through, I mean, I lived out of a little carry-on sized suitcase, whatever I could fit in the trunk or the boot. In Australia we say the boot of my car. That's all I could take with me, because I didn't want anything within sight of anyone looking into my car. So I just have a little Toyota Yaris sedan, and so all I can fit in there is basically a few clothes, my camping gear, and a few other bits and pieces. And I lived basically wearing, hiking clothes, a couple of skirts, pair of jeans, and a couple of sweaters. And that was it for a whole year, pretty much. And it did get changed out for winter when I came back to Portland last year. I took some winter stuff, but currently, oh my gosh, I have all these clothes. It's like going shopping in the storage unit. And so I swapped them out, and I didn't even remember half of the things that I had. So realistically, I could have actually gotten rid of those too. But once you see them again, it's like, oh no, I'll hold on to that. I might need it one. But I'm really strict now. And I really loved your recent episode on style and, just having things that bring you joy, because I'm all about that. Like, I got rid of everything that didn't bring joy anymore. And so now my wardrobe is just things that I love. And in saying that, though, I can't take all of that on the road.
So you need, say, a new pair of hiking boots, and you're not going to be back to your home base for a month or two. Do you just have them delivered where you're, at your next house gig? Like, how far in advance do you have to line up all your gigs?
So last year I was really obsessed about having everything lined up, because I was nervous about the whole thing. And I had house sits booked pretty much back to back most of the time. There were a few Airbnb situations and a few camping situations. But this year I'm doing it differently. I decided to focus on California. So I'm in Oregon right now until I think mid-April. And then I'm heading back to California, because when I arrived in California, it just hit me straight away with, oh my gosh, this is the Goldilocks of everything that's on my list. Everything that I'm looking for in a new destination to live. And it just made sense to focus on house sitting there. It's a huge state, so there's a lot to explore and work out. I still don't know where I want to live, but for the rest of this year, that's what I'll be doing, is focusing on that. But I also want plenty of time this year to do more camping. I didn't do enough of it last year. So this year I'll be focused more on national parks and getting out into nature more.
Do you think people who are listening to this like think that camping and hiking and stuff is harder than it actually is?
Yes. And at least from what I've, had discussions with different people, and I thought that too, but you really don't need that much. Like this much a lot of people, but I didn't even have a cooler. Called it I didn't even have a cooler.
Wow.
Whole year. And I was in New Mexico and Colorado and Arizona and Utah. So desert, like hot places. So when I was camping, it was just too much of a hassle for me to worry about ice and things like that. So I just planned around it and I was okay. But you really don't need too much stuff as long as you have a tent and a sleeping bag. I encourage people to get really good quality sleeping pads, though, because that makes a big difference. And make sure you get a sleeping bag that is the correct warmth rate for where you're going to be, and always get one warmer than you think you'll need because it gets cold out there.
I bet. Okay, this is another question like I probably should have asked earlier when we were talking about this. Did you even know how to build a fire?
I still don't. I'm so embarrassed. I still don't know how to actually build a fire. So in my head I do, but I've never actually physically done it. So that's on my agenda next. I need to learn how to build a fire. I want to be able to survive in nature if I have to.
Yeah.
That's one of my goals. So I want to learn all those things.
2 years ago, I watched, and I'm sure everybody talks to you about this. 2 years ago, I watched the movie Wild, which is with Reese Witherspoon, and I confidently like marched out into my nice house, with air conditioning or whatever, and I announced to my partner, I'm like, I'm gonna hike the Pacific Crest Trail. And he looked at me and he just started laughing, and he was like, "Sure you are." Like, you're gonna forage for food? I was like, yes. He was like, really? Like, no.
Well, you know what? I read her book. I don't know how I found her book. I think I was starting to get really into nature and adventure. And I found the book, read it, fell in love, watched the movie, watched it again, read the book again, went out to REI and bought my first pair of hiking boots, which I still have, and realized that you can actually get by with hiking shoes. You don't necessarily need boots. They're heavy. And I'm going to do the PCT. And I was going to do it. And I started researching it. And, there's water crossing. And there's snow. So that was no, I'm not doing it. I fear of water and I don't like snow. So that went out the window, and I just decided to focus on just some regular old hikes to get started with.
Think eventually you will do that trail?
I don't know. I recently stayed at an Airbnb in Washington, a little place on 60 acres. It was so adorable, and they were so sweet. They had actually built a through hiker cabin because their property, the trail went through their property. Not the PCT, it was the other one, the Northwest Trail, I think it is. And they had mattresses in there and some snacks for people, and they had a little journal that people could write in. So I went up there and I read people's entries, and it was so inspiring. I was like, wow, you're amazing to go out there and do this. It's so scary to think of being out there alone. And
how long does it take? It takes 3 months or 6 months?
Depending
on, I guess, the time of year.
Months, yeah, and you have to time it right, and yeah, so maybe one day, but I think I would do that with someone.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Yeah. Have you ever felt because I know you do a lot of solo hikes.
Yeah.
You ever felt afraid of animal? Have you ever encountered anything that you've been oh no, that's mountain lion or a bear or a something?
So, few things that stand out. So, one was a hike. I think it was in Colorado, and it was quite remote and it was deserted. I didn't see anyone. I was at the end of it. There was a waterfall, and you had to sort of hike down into this canyon. There were boulders that you had to climb over, and it was beautiful. But I started feeling really just off, like really weird. Like my senses were on high alert. And anyway, normally I would sit there for an hour or so, like wherever I end up. And this time I'm like, okay, yep, pretty, took some photos, time to go back. Turned around. And it was like, oh my God, there's a cave. So there was a cave like not far from where I was. And then I started paying more attention and I realized that it was perfect cougar terrain. There were boulders where it could hide. And I'm pretty sure that cave belonged to someone's home, either a bear or a cougar. I'm pretty sure it would have been a cougar, but I hightailed it out of there and it was pretty scary. So nothing happened, but it was just my intuition was just on high alert. Another scary time. I mean, there's a few scary times. Once I was in Montana and I was driving. I went out to see a sunset on a hike and got there, went to turn back, and Google was telling me to go a different way home, back to my campground. And I was like, it takes an hour. It only took me 20 minutes to get here. Why is it doing that? Anyway, I went against my intuition and went the way that Google told me to. I ended up on this deeply rutted, potholed road in the middle of nowhere. It was on the sort of like the off-road section where you're only meant to go there with 4-wheel drive. And of course I had a 2-wheel drive. And it was getting dark, and it was one of the most scary experiences of my life because I thought my car was just going to break down. It was so rutted. It was about 15 miles of that, and it took me an hour and a half to get back to my campground. And so to this day, I still have a phobia of rutted roads because that happened in the first week of my adventures. I'm like, oh my. Have seen bears, but they don't really bother me too much in terms of fear. There are a couple of people hiking in front of me and all of a sudden they stopped and I'm like, oh, there's something there. I'm like, what is it, guys? And they're like, and they were whispering and I'm like, okay. And I started clapping my hands and sort of talking loudly because that's what you're meant to do if you encounter bears and they're close by, just so they know that you're there and you don't startle them. And I got talking to these people and they said, oh, yeah, we live in bear country. And I'm like, well, then you should know what to do.
Right.
That trail actually got closed down on that hike because there were a few other bear sightings. So you just have to be aware and know. You have to be educated when you go out there and know what you're getting into.
Sure. Has it really taught you a lot about trusting your intuition?
Yeah. Yeah. So I've always been big on intuition, but being out there, especially as a solo female hiker or camper, I'm very aware of my surroundings. I research and research and research and read reviews. There have been hot springs I've really wanted to go to, but there were sightings of, a very scary sounding man around the area. So I didn't go, and I've turned back on trails. Like I've started out on trails. I've turned back because I didn't feel right. I carry protection. I don't force myself to do it if it feels wrong.
That's amazing. I think as women, especially as we get older, I think our intuition just increases or we learn how to trust it more. What do you think?
I think, we learn to trust it more, at least in my experience. I would always have that intuition, but I would never follow it, or I would eventually follow it and I was like, okay, I should have done that in the first place because it's always right. Your intuition is always right.
It is always right.
No.
And there's nothing worse than like kicking yourself because you should have listened to what your gut was so clearly telling you.
Right. And it gets tricky though, because for anyone who experiences anxiety, especially chronic anxiety,
Here.
it can be really hard to differentiate between anxiety, which is your brain just trying to keep you safe, but there's no real valid reason for it, or intuition, which is more of it's a quieter voice. I think intuition is like, the anxiety is like, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Whereas intuition is like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And so that can be hard sometimes. So I'm learning to separate the two.
How do you think people who are listening to this who have a really hard time differentiating those two voices, what should they be looking for to know the difference?
It takes practice, and I know that's not very helpful maybe, but
Helpful.
just start practicing it in low risk situations like everyday life. For me, sometimes I don't want to leave the house. Like, I get bouts of anxiety and so I don't want to go out because that's going to happen, or this is going to happen, or blah, 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 blah. And, my brain starts telling me all these stories, and I just step back and look at it rationally. I was like, okay, there's no reason for any of those things to happen. Like, I know, for example, if I'm going on a hike, I know that the weather conditions are right. I know it's not going to storm or whatever. So sometimes I have to force myself to just not listen to the anxiety and just go for it and do the thing. Because the way I look at it, one thing I've learned from this whole thing is I'm going to be anxious no matter what, whether I'm sitting at home doing nothing and being, safe, or if I go out and do the thing that I want to do, I'm going to feel anxious. So I have two choices. Which one am I going to take? I'm going to take the one that's going to be fun, because this whole year, or this whole last year and a bit of doing this, I've had anxiety the entire duration of everything. And so that's a whole lot of worry that didn't eventuate into anything.
Right. Right. And think of the adventures you would have missed had you just
Oh my God.
you were going to stay put and not live this amazing life that you have.
Yeah.
Tell me how do you get did you have a photography background? Because the pictures you take out in nature are spectacular.
Thank you. No, I don't.
Like a cable book. So beautiful. You captured the most beautiful moments. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about, like, is that just, again, like a natural talent? Is that something you developed?
Yeah, I think nature plays a big part in that because she's so beautiful. So it's hard to take a bad photo. But I have no background. I have no special equipment. I use my iPhone for all of my photos. I've learned along the way. I invested in an amazing course called, I think it's iPhone Photography School. And I haven't even finished it. I'm like maybe a third of the way through. And I've learned so much from that and highly recommend it. It's not expensive. They always have sales on. So I think it was less than $100. So if you're an iPhone user, I really recommend something like that because it just teaches you little tricks. And it's just so fun. Like, I just experiment, and I mean, I have 60,000 photos on my drive. So, yeah, I'm constantly taking photos. So I just, a million photos of a flower. And I think the tricky thing is when you take photos of yourself, because when you're out there traveling alone, you have no one to take photos of you. And I want photos of me in them because they're great memories. And I did another course through an Aussie called Sorel Amour.
Okay.
She has a course online, and it's like a selfie course, and she's really fun. So I learned a lot from that. But taking photos or videos with yourself in them is really challenging and time consuming. So it's a lot of practice, and you feel like an idiot when you're out there and people walking by and you're posing. Whatever, I don't care anymore. just going to do it.
Absolutely. What would be the best thing, like if for anybody who's listening to this who wants to even get like a little baby taste of this adventure magic life that you are putting together, what would be like a little tiny taste, a little baby step they could take to try it out?
Yeah. So the platform that I use is called Trusted House Sitters, and it's phenomenal. It's one of the best things I've ever done, this whole thing, but they make it so easy because it allows you to travel anywhere globally. So you can choose, you go to Iceland if you want. There are house sits everywhere, anywhere you can imagine, and you can filter it. So I only look after cats or farm animals. I haven't looked after any farm animals yet, but you can filter it down to the types of pets you look after and duration and all of that kind of thing. And you can do it like locally. If you don't want to just do it full time, you definitely don't need to do that. You can do it for sort of staycations. So if you want to do a little vacation in your home state, you can find something that's around there and you just go off and stay in someone's home and do some pet care and go adventuring. Or you could take a month off or a few weeks off and just go on a little road trip and sort of plan it around your house sit. Highly recommend it because it just takes so much pressure off. I mean, traveling is expensive and accommodation is probably, apart from airfares, actually accommodation is probably even more expensive than airfares once you get beyond a certain length of time. So you get to stay in these beautiful, beautiful places for free. I've stayed in, oh my gosh, some luxurious homes, really beautiful. And I choose really well. I've learned a lot from a year of doing this. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, but I do have a link in my bio that people can use, and it gives them a 20% discount off the membership rate. If anyone has any questions, they can feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any, but yeah, it's definitely doable. You can create it around your life. You can make it fit your lifestyle.
And you do one-to-one coaching for women who want to figure out how to do this, correct?
Yes, I do that for anyone who has questions on it. I'm putting together a guide on house sitting tips for people who are new to it. And yeah, I just love seeing people go do the thing that they want to do, and especially women around our age, because it's time to shine. Time to shine any time of your life, but especially now when a lot of women are sort of maybe wanting to step into who they really are.
Absolutely. We're at this exciting, like pivotal point in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And why not choose adventure?
Yeah.
And why would
It's beautiful out there.
It is beautiful out there. It's a beautiful country. It's a beautiful world,
Yeah.
Why just, type at your desk waiting for your retirement when you can be, going from hot spring to hot spring like Rachael Lancaster? Hello. What sounds more fun, right?
Definitely.
All right. So I'm going to hop into our bonus questions that I'm going to be asking everybody, that I am asking everyone at the end of every episode. So we're just going to do some quicko questions before we thank you for your generous time with me. So, coffee or tea?
Hot chocolate.
Love it. Is there a specific hot chocolate that you like?
I make my own just with raw cacao and a bunch of other ingredients.
What kind of milk do you make it with?
Usually soy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you put like sugar in it or stevia or honey or what?
So I use raw cacao, a little bit of coconut oil, maple syrup, and or stevia. Sometimes I use coconut sugar. What else? A little bit of vanilla extract, and it is so good.
Could you send me the recipe so I can put it in the show notes?
Absolutely.
And what do you like to pair it with as a snack?
Chocolate.
Do you have a specific vegan chocolate that you like?
Oh, there's one called, I think it's called Evolution.
Oh, okay.
That's a new one I've been getting into. Yeah. And then there's
Yummy
also,
raw.
sorry.
Is that one of those yummy raw chocolates that you turned me on to in the past?
I don't think this one's raw, but there is a raw one I really love, and it's called, oh gosh, Hail Mary.
Oh, okay.
Is insanely good. You find it in the refrigerated section. Oh, that's good.
I will look for it. Is there a theme song for this phase of your life?
I am obsessed with Iniko's Jericho song.
What is it called?
Jericho.
Jericho by who?
Iniko, Iniko.
I have not discovered that yet.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yeah.
I will also link that in the show notes. What superpower have you discovered in midlife?
Manifestation.
Oh, tell me more.
I just realized that when I have a dream, when I want to do something, that it just seems to fall in. Once I put the intention out there and I speak it out loud, it just starts happening. And it's sort of like, and yeah, you need to put real intention behind it. Definitely. But I've just had really beautiful experiences with manifestation.
Fabulous. And my last question for our interview is, if you could get in a time machine, go back in time to 30-year-old Rachael, what would you tell her?
I would tell her that she will never fit in because she's not meant to.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God, Rachael, I love you so much. I'm so
I love you.
I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so inspired by you. I can't wait for you to have retreats so I can go on them and follow you into a gorgeous hiking adventure. And I'm sure everyone who's listening to this is so inspired by you. I love women. I love everyone who lives out of the box. But I especially love my midlife lady friends who are living these out-of-box adventures.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review, as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.